Sunday, April 3rd, 2022. It wasn't even 9 a.m. before it had already become one of the worst weeks I've ever had. But let's backtrack. To start this story, we need to go back to Friday, April 1st, 2022. On Facebook, I changed my status to say I had moved to Montreal, and people had a good laugh about it because it was April Fool's Day and I had just said something outlandish. If you're one of the people who saw that, there was a lot more truth to it than you probably realized. I'd been working with a local temp agency and I'd gotten some nice jobs through it, but then the recruiter approached me with an opportunity to do some very similar work for a month in Montreal, and the compensation was insane. That's not a term I'm using lightly either. I mean, this wasn't just a little crazy, it was a full-on cry for help. Okay, I know that every job posting is sort of a cry for help, but you know what I mean. It seemed like a lovely opportunity for someone else. There was just no way I could drop everything and go do that. No way. Very definitely no way. And then damned if consequences didn't start aligning to make it possible. Chief among them, my lease in Michigan was ending on March 31st. So I could just have no rent for April other than the Residence Inn, but the big company was paying for that. Yeah, I know I sound like I'm overplaying my hand with how big the company is. Suffice to say, you have known the name of this company since you were a kid, and they do not want me mentioning the name. Now, I'd love to say to them that I'm not under an NDA, and if they'd like my silence, they can just hire it out of me, but I still would like the option of working for them someday, so that. And yeah, I know I've been going on about the sizable compensation, which was sizable. But what's even better than that? Sizable compensation that I hardly had to touch because all my transportation was covered, and my hotel, and a generous per diem for food. What could possibly go wrong? This portion of our program is brought to you by Foreshadowing. Foreshadowing, try it today. Might be too late tomorrow. We now return to Sunday, April 3rd, 2022, about 7:30 a.m. The recruiter and her husband were driving me and my colleague from Detroit to Windsor. I had barely slept the previous night, but who cares? I can sleep on a train. I mean, I bet I could sleep on a train, just I'm American, we don't do trains, but I read about them. As we approached the Ambassador Bridge, I was impressed to see how normal it looked. How unclogged by sulking truck drivers it was. It was the first time in quite a while that I had experienced the Thai ideology of Sanuk, or at least Sanuk as I understand it, which means a translation filtered through Spalding Gray. And, spoiler, I still haven't experienced it since then. The border agent started with all of the discouraging behaviors. You should know that in my head I deliberately spelled behaviors Yankee style. Furrowed brows, repeated, rephrased questions. In the middle of the conversation, he abruptly closed his window and then returned with a long slip of yellow paper covered with copious notes. He definitely didn't like the sound of something or other, so we had to drive to the secondary screening area with the notes from the first agent and see what could be done there. We got to the office where they keep the extra fun staff. An unwatched TV kept blaring the Canadian version of SportsCenter, which apparently exists. And yes, Canadian SportsCenter uses the Canadian spelling of center. That will never come up at bar trivia, but if it does, you are so set. There was an agent at an empty window on the phone having a matter-of-fact conversation with somebody. I couldn't tell who it was. I couldn't tell the nature of the conversation, except the all-business tone led me to believe she was making a routine check-in with one of her colleagues. And then just before hanging up, she gave a bone-dry, "I love you." I know that can't be the standard sign-off for Canadian frontline government agents, but man, do I want it to be. As things dragged on, I could feel the trip starting to slip further and further away. Even if we were allowed in, we'd already missed the train, so we wouldn't get there until Monday at the very earliest. Hope springs eternal. So what was the problem? Well, the recruiter had decided that we weren't going to need work visas. Fun fact, she is not the person who gets to make that determination. As I understand things, we had been asked to work for this big company because they weren't having any luck finding locals to do the job. If a company in Montreal brings in two loudmouth Yankees and spends all this additional money to keep them content, Occam's razor highly suggests they must have attempted to find Quebecois talent and failed. But you have to have documentation of that, and we didn't. Monday morning, our contact at the big company invited us to a 5 p.m. Zoom meeting to discuss. At 4:57 p.m., the Americans were disinvited from the Zoom, and that was that. The recruiter says she feels just horrible, and I don't doubt it. However, she walked away from that experience still having a permanent home address, so that's one up on me. I don't have a wrap-up for this. Any of you hiring? I guess I should disclose that I am a foreign national whose ID is now flagged due to a failed attempt to infiltrate one of our country's strongest allies. Yeah, I'm a political boogeyman. Say, gals, does that give me any bad boy points? Yeah, I didn't think so either. But that's my story. Leave me a like, a comment, and subscribe to this bad dad. I love you. There are something like 80 trillion videos on YouTube, and you decided to watch this one. Thanks for doing that. Got some other ones over here, or maybe they're here, I don't know. And the round thing is for subscribing, and thanks.